Now it's about selling the fact that this is nighttime, right? So we did this before and it was pretty straightforward. So we can do that again on this one by going here, here in saturation, colorize, and then we want to turn this into, let's go darker than we went last time. So something like that. So see, you can already tell it's going to work nice because it looks pretty close. So we can do something like that. And then now I'm going to hide that effect starting here and then going out. And then if you do this correctly, it will feel like it's this building that's lighting everything up. And the rest of the image is kind of getting revealed from it. And then you can get as creative or as uncreative as you want on how you start lighting up objects, because here I could go in here and say maybe the top of that stone should be like giving like a little effect like that. Maybe this tree should be lit up like that. That guy should be really lit up on this side. Maybe this side of the image needs to be like, so obviously you want your building to be the bright spot. And it may be that some of these are like too much and you got to revisit them. So I think it's not that one. I think it's the one that's applying to this image. So I think that's what I didn't want. I don't want that super foggy one. Oops, I don't want to delete it. But I don't need it for the night rendering. And then, so we've got that guy glowing there. Maybe the background should be darker right around the building there. And we can select that using this guy again. So if I grab this, now I'm only going to affect that area. And then you can add to your selection if you hold shift. So I can grab all this too and grab all that. So now I'm not touching the building. So I can't affect it. And then I can hide away. Where's my super custom layer? This guy. So now I can say, you know what, really like back here should have been a little bit darker. Now I can let go and then look at it and say, like, does it look like night or not? And then you can still add that other effect on top, that color layer. So this was a solid color, and just because it's night doesn't mean you don't want to like warm up part of it. So we can use something like that. You set that to overlay, and you turn it way down so that it gets a little bit of warmth where you have the building. And then it's just a matter of drawing that in where you would want people to really look. So in this case, maybe that's Frank going for a night ride. So we want that to be the main focus, and then he'll have like a light source, or maybe he's lit up from the back because he's like jumping off this thing. So now we got rid of that background being too bright. So now let's bring this guy into the foreground by revealing here. I'm on this guy, so you want to flip it. So like that. So see, now by doing this, whoa, I didn't want to do that. I don't need that. Nope. Before I forget, let me save this as render. So we've got that in there. We're looking for I'm gonna close my Enscape just to free up my computer a little bit so it's not chugging along, because it's already recording and doing a bunch of stuff. So this is really where you make or break the image, whether it's believable or not. So if you're good at thinking about this kind of stuff, oops, it will make all the difference. See, that's why I closed the other thing, because I'm moving my mouse and then, see there, that's, what else do I have open? So I guess I don't need SketchUp anymore. So save, because we've gotten everything we needed out of there. And then I don't need this, which can make it go slow. Okay, so that feels better. So then that little guy, you can go in there, and I'm going quick. I'm not trying to be like super precise or anything, but the more you add lighting effect to these guys, the more believable it becomes. So look at it without that, and then look at it with that, and you can start seeing how certain things will appear. Oh, here's a really good one. This tree is like totally fake looking because we chopped it right there. So we can come up here and start revealing that. Maybe we use a 50 here to get rid of that hard line. And if you wanted to, you can try using the that little maple leaf guy to kind of, oops, to try and make it look like some of these are being lit. And see, when you do it right, like, it doesn't look like the maple leaf. It looks like, see, it's too much. And then as we go through here, so see, I'm looking at my navigator and I can tell that's looking good. I don't know if that looks, it looks very different on there now. But like, we can see this guy, and then we can start bringing him using that guy. And I'm just using 20 opacity. Oh no. Trying to make sure he's always lit from the back. And this is really only using one image. It's just this picture, and then we have the rendering. Maybe this tree is a little bit lit, but not as intense as the other ones were. Here you have rocks. So think about if this was actually 3D, like what would be lit up and what wouldn't. And then that's where it either looks right or it won't. Man, it created a bunch of stuff. Let's put Frank in here. So here the key thing will be to match his vanishing point and perspective to the scene. So if you hold control as you're transforming, you can do this. And a lot of people get confused with this, but imagine the little frame as if it was in SketchUp and it was actually in perspective. So it should vanish, like the vertical should be vertical or be aligned with the verticals in the scene, and then the other ones, they don't just go like in a random direction. You make them look like they're vanishing in perspective, and when you do it correctly, it actually looks really good, and it'll look like he's in that space. So here, this one got way off, but we can put him there. That vertical looks like it needs to come down more. Maybe this one can go over. And so when you get it right, he'll look like he's actually back there. And he looks like he would be maybe that tall. And you can crank him down. So maybe we put him like he's over there watching. So on this one, I'm going to do a hue and saturation on him. Darken him a lot, because he's like a silhouette pretty much at that point. And then you reveal him from the side there, and he'll look like he's actually lit up. So he's pretty hard to see, but he's in there. And then this guy, can't see where he's going, so maybe we add a light effect to his bike. So we'll make a new layer. And this one's always good to show, so something like that. Fill that with white. And I'm going to go filter, field blur from here. Turn that one down, that one here. Say okay. And then let's see if we set that to kind of like this one in normal, but let's leave it normal for now. Let's put that outer glow on it. It's like a warm color like that. Maybe it's a little big. See, I'm looking here really. I ignore here sometimes when it's something like this that you're looking at like compositionally, because I want to bring him into the foreground a little bit more. And then you get this cool effect if you do this one and then you mask off the end, because it will kind of fade into the other color. And it really plays up that. This is why I didn't want to lose the white from printing it on an overlay. You see, now it doesn't have the same impact that the other one does. And if it's too much, you can always turn down the opacity on this layer. I kind of like it. So we've got that guy, and then he's lighting up some stuff. So we've added that source of light to our scene. So then we could say, you know what, maybe he's causing an effect here. Although it is already pretty dark. So let's look at our original image again. So I guess that's not that much you can do right there. Although we could do something like this. Let's see how that looks. So that's looking pretty good. If you wanted to really like bump up some areas more than like what they already are, or like in this sense where I'm trying to make that tree brighter but it's already like maxed out pretty much for what I can get, you can add another like brightness and contrast and make the brightness like insanely bright, and then you only use that like in really small amounts as like the super highlight, like the very brightest piece. And when it's done correctly, it looks really good. When it's done bad, it totally destroys everything else. So use this one carefully, because what I would do is something like this, where you make it like extremely bright. You can, if you want to go even crazier, you just use a white layer, like solid white, because you can't get any brighter than that. And then we invert it, and now you only bring it back like right on the very edge. So I'm going to use a small brush, and I would only really do this if you have like a big area like this in the foreground, and sometimes you need to use like a really heavy intensity on your, oops, I'm using the wrong color. So see something like this, and maybe we bring that down. And what this will do is create that super highlight right along the edge, and that really makes it feel like it's lit up from that side. And trust me, when you look at it from here, it doesn't make a big difference, but then when we toggle it on and off, this is like the trick to making it really believable. Oops. You can see here where there was nothing else I could do on this tree, now I have like a ton of flexibility. Could go way up onto it. Whoa. And then maybe we go like here. Maybe a little bit on that rock. Maybe like randomly here. And then when you look at this, let's full screen it, and then you toggle that on and off. So see how it just adds a little bit of pop to those, and then notice I only did them in certain ones where I wanted it to look like it was doing it. So then when you get rid of, oh, it's here. Oh, so Frank's not even in the right spot. No wonder he was weird looking. He's supposed to be back here. Or is he in the right spot? No, he should be here. But where he's standing, it's okay. So if you get rid of that, that's a big difference. And it's just the mask that does it. And that really helps guide your eye to where you would want someone to look. And so the key to having the rendering that's really believable isn't necessarily what setting you use, or whether it's Enscape or Thea or Lumion. It's really all in how you bring everything together so that it tells that story. So we can have that as the night, and then you can then also use these same kind of effects to do it in the daytime. So if you need to add more stuff, I'm trying to think what else would be believable. Oh, let's say like you have like a city or something like that, and you want like a light effect, like cars at night. That's when I get asked all the time. So it's super easy. It's not much different than this light source, but you can make. So let's say he had like a red streak coming back from like where he went. So maybe he came around like that or something, and then he's jumping off. So we wanted to show that kind of action going behind the tree. I can make a, I'm just going to start with a new layer, and I would go something like this maybe. And then we can, I mean, ideally you would do it like this actually. You would, so I want it to look like this is the path. So he's going to be doing something like that. So let's say that's where he came from. And I want like a red streak or something that looks like car lights. So the source of the light I would want is probably the middle of like where it would be is white. The reason it looks weird is because it's behind that layer. And then let's invert the mask, and then get a brush with 0 opacity. And then there's a cool trick with the brush. If you hold shift after you click once, then it will draw a straight line and connect. So we can do straight lines for now. Connect them to here. So that's more or less the path I would want. And then you can add an effect. So here we can do the outer glow again, but rather than do that color, I'm going to make it like a red. And then you can adjust the spread, the size. We want it more intense or less. I think here like a little bit softer is better. And like see here, it's hard to tell, but when you look at the little picture, it's really obvious that that's probably too much. Here it looks probably okay. So you would want to be careful, and that's why I really like the Navigator, because I use it all the time. So maybe the spread, we pull it down a little, and then maybe that's just a little too bright. And the cool thing is if you're using these types of layers with effects and the adjustment layer, you can always change it. So you don't have to have it perfect by the time you hit enter. And then this should be falling off. It shouldn't be consistent, right? So we can make a big brush here. Switch to 20 opacity now. Start getting rid of the end of it. And then obviously here, you wouldn't see it because he went behind the tree. So that you would get rid of like that. And then as you get through and start adding like more and more effects, you can be more and more either fluid, or you can help sell the story that he did that. And maybe here it doesn't go, yeah, maybe that is kind of cool. So he has some sort of light effect going across there. And so a lot of the times if you get to building, so if you look at our original rendering, there's not a whole lot to it. It's really all how we blended it with the other images. I don't even see it. Oh, here it is. So that's all that's really left of our image. So that looked pretty good to start with, and then when we put it in there, then that really sells it that you're in there. And let's say now I'm like, you know what, I like that purpley feel that the sky had here, so how can I get that effect? So if we go to our hue and saturation that's coloring everything, we can start trying to tint it a little bit more into that kind of purpley, or maybe it needs to be darker. So it's up to you really what you like or what works best for that scene. Or we could undo all this, leave it the way it was, and if you want to go nuts, like do, so here's the cool thing, you can always go on top of everything, either with another hue and saturation, like to just nuke everything. So we could do like a really dark one. I don't recommend going very dark if you're printing, because there's an effect that happens, like a screen uses what's called additive colors. So when you combine red, green, and blue on the screen and all the colors get together, it becomes white. Whereas when you print, it's a subtractive process, so when you combine all the colors on a printer, it becomes black. So on the screen, black reads really nice and bright, but when you print, it will always print darker than what it looked like on your screen, just because of that effect, because it's naturally lightening. So that's the main reason I don't recommend doing like the solid black night renderings, because when they print, they're so black that it's really hard to see anything. So if you're ever worried about how dark your image will print, you can throw on the very top like a brightness adjustment. That's just the whole image, and you just brighten your image a little bit, and then it will print more like what you actually saw before, because that just kind of corrects it for that a little. So here maybe we have like this really dark one, and then you use this really just for the edges, and then you hide it all away. So see, like it didn't really do a whole lot, but it helps kind of nuke some of that color. Maybe I like that guy. And if it's too intense, we can go back to our curves, which is what's giving us all that contrast. Drop this guy on the top of all this. So here, you'll see this is like, now I can totally nuke out all that contrast if I wanted to, and really brighten the image back up or bring it down. So you don't necessarily have to like stop with either what came out or what it started looking like. Let's say it starts getting weird. A couple of these adjustment layers, you can totally take it from way on one end of the spectrum, like really dark and gloomy, to making it super bright and happy. And it's just a matter of thinking about what you're trying to do and just sticking to it. So it's really important to have a game plan as to what you want, and then you can get that in there. So any questions on that? Does it make sense? Is this interesting? Does it look good? What do you think?
I have to practice because a lot of information.
Sure. But hopefully this takes some of the mystery out of renderings, because when you see those renderings, you're like, man, they're amazing, like how they do that, like it looks like they modeled the entirety of New York. In reality, they didn't. They just found like the perfect image, they aligned the render perfectly, and then they spent time blending it so you can't tell where the edge of the rendering is. And more often than not, something like this, where the actual rendered part is like 10% of the total image, and the rest is like a really cool picture that they found, or they made it. Like if you find like the right angle and you have another image, and then you combine the two so that you get it in there. So don't feel like you have to model everything. There's the other extreme where they would create this and model every piece, and then when you look at it, you're like, wow, like they actually did model every rock, every tree, every leaf is in the 3D model. But if it's just a still image like this, I mean, I was going slow because I was showing you guys, and we did it in a couple hours. So you could imagine where if you were working full speed, you could make a lot of really good stuff really quickly. So that's what I want you guys to think about as you're doing the homework. It's creating that sense that it's actually believable that was there. And I think what's making this look weird is that tree should be dark on the other side. So this side is lit, not the entire side, so I need to grab that here. So that's bugging me, it looks like a cartoon. Ah, it's like low. Come on. So that looks way better. And then you have all these things up there live, so if I don't like how warm it is, or you wanted like a green effect, or make it even colder. So, and I encourage you guys to play around, see what happens. Like what happens if we go like pink. Like maybe that's something. Sometimes you get surprised and it actually ends up looking pretty cool. But I'm pretty sure this will be right where you want to be. At least that's what I'm thinking for this one. And if this wasn't enough light, you wanted to like exaggerate it, you can do this effect and make it look like it's casting out rays of light. And then as long as you mask it, it becomes believable. So let's say something like that. And here you can do it. So I'll show you a different way to do light. You use a gradient. So give me my gradient, and then use this one, transparent, or foreground to transparent, and then set it to white, 20% normal, and then we just go out like this. And then as you get farther away, you do less and less, and then we unselect, and then this one you do set it to like overlay or something like that. And then it does become a matter of, you can use the lasso. Lasso, okay, I have that selected. Then we can do that blur. Since this one's a gradient, the Gaussian would probably work just fine. Yeah, so you don't even notice it anymore. It's probably too much. But what you don't want is that weirdness there. So maybe something like that. But here I'm getting blown out, so I probably wouldn't do that on this one. I mean, it was kind of cool, but you can also get that same effect using a brightness and contrast. Which other ones are here that are interesting? Exposures, it works a little bit different. Like it gives you a ton of contrast right away. So you want to be careful how much of this one you use. So that's what I got for today. So hopefully we come up with some cool stuff.